Buhari's 143 billion naira election budget request sails through National Assembly Joint Committee. Transmission Company of Nigeria explains why 16.5 billion naira spent on power project hasn't improved Nigeria's services. In international news, Trump warms up to Mexico, announces trade deal, excludes Canada. And in sports, boxer Ajagba wins bout without fighting.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Finally, a bit of good news from the National Assembly. The National Assembly Joint Committee on the Independent National Electoral Commission has adopted President Buhari's 143 billion naira request for next year's general elections. The request was adopted in a closed-door meeting of the committee, made up of senators and members of the House of Representatives. Members debated the practicability of both budgets submitted by INEC and the President, but finally settled for the President's figures. The INEC team is expected to appear before the committee with a revised copy for consideration. Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has spoken on how huge funds went down the drain in previous administrations during which much was earned for the country, but little was invested in infrastructure. Osinbajo said only prudent management of resources can save Nigeria, not the popular notion that Nigeria's problems can only be solved through restructuring. He says, quote, under the Abacha regime, Nigeria realized over $100 billion. In Yaradua regime, the country got over $400 billion. And in Jonathan's time, Nigeria realized over $300 billion from oil revenues. The question we must all ask is, what happened to the resources? End quote. The Vice President said the government is committed to transparent use of funds in providing infrastructure. The only Christian girl among the students Boko Haram adopted from Government Girls Secondary School in Dapchi, Yobe State, Leah Sharibu, has reportedly spoken from the terrorist hideout. In the 35 seconds recording, Sharibu appealed to President Buhari to save her from the terrorists. Leah Sharibu was detained because of a refusal to denounce her Christian faith. The Department of State Services and the State Security Services have decided to probe the recording to see if indeed it was Leah Sharibu's voice. The presidency says it will spare no efforts to ensure all the girls, including Sharibu, are freed from captivity. The Transmission Company of Nigeria said 3 attempts for a supervisory control and data acquisition meant to monitor electricity in Nigeria have failed, with one project costing 16 billion naira. SCADA is a tool for real-time data and voice exchange among remote power stations. TCN Managing Director Husman Mohammed said Nigeria has failed at 3 attempts, the last one 12 years ago, after which a committee was set up to review what led to the failures. She says from the report, Nigeria cannot even start procurement until the network communication backbone is fixed. Amnesty International has appealed to the federal government to speed up the cleanup of the oil sites in Ogoni land. The group says quickening the cleanup would reduce the health hazards and other issues threatening people's well-being in the area. The group also called for local content in the cleanup process as a way of creating jobs for youths in that region. The group frowned at the failure of the federal government to provide potable water for the people after years of reports of contaminated water consumed in that region. Let's talk business. The National Bureau of Statistics has revealed that the decline in Nigeria's oil production has slowed the country's gross domestic product to 1.5% in the second quarter of 2018. The latest GDP report released on Monday shows the GDP grew by 1.5% year-on-year, even as the average daily oil production in the second quarter drops to 0.03 million barrels per day. The growth in the Nigerian economy was driven by developments in the non-oil sector. Denmark's ambassador to Nigeria, Torben Getterman, says Nigeria's exports to his country have risen by more than 100% within the first 3 months of this year. He said with concern that before now, the trade volume had been too small. Denmark had imported so much from Nigeria than it exported. The ambassador said with satisfaction that he has improved trade relations between the two countries since becoming Denmark's ambassador to Nigeria. Denmark imports from Nigeria totaled $57 million in 2017, which is a rise compared to 2016. The federal government has approved 2 billion naira for the takeoff of the new Nigerian Army University in Biu, Borno State. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tikor Buratai, says the university, which was recommended by the Minister of Education, Adamu, was approved during the Federal Executive Council meeting. Buratai says the university will be a specialized solution center for the military and the country and would be different from conventional universities in Nigeria. It would concentrate on improving the military intellectually and technologically and annihilating from its roots the group terrorizing the northeastern parts of Nigeria. Executive Secretary of the National Universities Commission, Abubakar Adamu, has asked university vice-chancellors across Nigeria to ensure the lecturers who sexually abuse students do not only suffer these consequences but are subjected to public ridicule. He said the images of the nation's universities are being dented by some unscrupulous perpetrators in the universities. If the trend is allowed to continue, Adamu said the future of education in the country is in jeopardy. He said Nigeria should be seen as producing graduates that can compete favorably with other colleagues anywhere in the world. The National Broadcasting Commission has threatened to shut down radio and television stations owing licensing fees. NBC Director General Ishak Kawo gave a deadline of September 15 for indebted stations to present a payment plan or be shut down. He said the commission is being owed 4 billion naira by the debtor stations. An agreement was reached in February between the stations and NBC on how to recover the debt. Kawo said the stations have not kept their words lived up to the agreement. When we return, African news, and later, Trump revises deal with Mexico, leaves out Canada.
You are watching ANN.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay, Lindsay, you alright? Keep walking down, keep walking to the left, yes?
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
Welcome back. Let's talk about stories around Africa. British Prime Minister Theresa May has kicked off a tour of the African continent where she hopes to lay the foundation for post-Brexit trade deals. She arrived in Cape Town, South Africa on Tuesday. The visit to South Africa, Nigeria and Kenya are the first to the continent since becoming Prime Minister 2 years ago and will be seen as an effort to stamp her authority on her embattled premiership. In a speech in Cape Town, May pledged to prioritize UK investment in Africa. She also plans to seek new trade deals during preparations to leave the European Union. Death toll from an Ebola outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo has risen to 75. The nation's health ministry said on Monday 111 cases of hemorrhagic fever had been reported in the area. It said 47 deaths have been recorded among 83 confirmed cases and another 28 likely due to Ebola. The latest outbreak is in North Kivu province where armed groups are active. Explosions and gunfire echoed across suburbs of Libya capital on Monday as rival groups linked to the unity government faced off with tanks and pickups mounted with machine guns. Fighting broke out early in the day with intermittent explosions heard in the Ain River, Ain Zara neighborhood of southeast Tripoli. There was no official casualty toll from the health ministry, but the Office of Tripoli Security Services said one person was killed and 3 others were wounded. The unity government condemned outlawed groups for the violence terrifying local residents. The UN-backed government of national accord warned that all those involved in the Saudi attack are considered outlaws and will be pursued without mercy. France said on Monday it had killed a top official of Islamic State affiliate in West Africa during an operation in Mali. The Defense Ministry has identified him as Mohamed Al-Munir. Another member of the group and 2 civilians were also killed. France has deployed some 4,000 French troops in West Africa's Sahel region as part of an operation aimed at combating Islamic militants in the region. South Sudan has announced it will resume pumping oil next month in Unity State areas, where it was suspended 5 years ago because of the civil war. Production is expected to return to its normal average of 375,000 barrels per day in 3 years, with more than 200,000 anticipated barrels by the end of this year. South Sudan's output currently stands at 130,000 barrels per day. The country's economy is heavily dependent on crude oil production. South Sudan expects to meet this target at the end of the year following the completion of maintenance work. The move is part of a ceasefire agreement reached by President Salva Kiir, rebel leader Riek Machar, and other armed groups to end years of civil war. Police in Ethiopia have arrested the former president of the country's Somali region, Abdi Mohamed Omar. He is expected to be charged with human rights violations, including instigating ethnic and religious violence. He was forced to step down earlier this month after the federal government deployed troops to the Somali region. The standoff left dozens of people dead after a spate of deadly clashes in the regional capital, Jijiga, and nearby towns. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed had said Abiy would face charges following the incident. Human Rights Watch has accused Abdi of running a secret jail where suspected members of a separatist group were tortured. At least 2 police officers have died in fresh violence in Western Cameroon, where English-speaking separatists have declared an independent state. An army spokesperson said the men were killed by armed pro-independence fighters near the town of Wum in northwest region. The separatist camp spoke of 9 police dead. Army spokesperson Colonel Didier Badjak said on Facebook 21 of the attackers had been neutralized without saying how many had been involved in the assault. Separatist unrest in Cameroon's 2 minority English-speaking regions, northwest and southwest, has left scores dead and at least 200,000 displaced since late 2016. 30,000 of those displaced have crossed the border into neighboring Nigeria. Security in the 2 regions has deteriorated significantly since late last year. Government figures shows more than 100 police and security forces have been killed. Coming up, international news and later sport. Nigerian Efe Ajagba wins first heavyweight bout without fighting.
You are watching ANN.
MTN gives 2,000% bonus for reactivating your MTN SIM. That's right. If you haven't used your MTN SIM for 45 days or more, recharge now and get 2,000% bonus. That's right, 2,000% bonus for your first recharge of every month.
Welcome back to NN News. Now to international stories. Far-right protesters in Germany have been angry at foreigners and have taken to the streets after a man was stabbed to death. The German-Cuban man was killed and 2 others were left in the need of hospital treatment after what police described on Sunday as a dispute between several people of various nationalities. Police have arrested an Iraqi man and a Syrian man in connection with the death, prompting 800 demonstrators in Chemnitz, where a far-right Alternative for Germany party received nearly a quarter of the votes last year. Meanwhile, hundreds of supporters of Pegida, a German nationalist anti-Islam and anti-immigration group, also gathered for another demonstration on Monday evening. Many people were injured as objects were flung from both sides. Chancellor Angela Merkel has condemned the actions of the protesters. Police say investigations are ongoing. Hyperinflation in Venezuela has led to an economic crisis which is spreading to the health system. Doctors have gone on strike as the hospitals struggle to provide health care services. Reports say patients were seen stocked up on hospital trolleys and large sections of the hospital boarded off because of lack of medics, medicine and supplies. A doctor said she was paid $20 a month, while a packet of eggs cost her $16. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is struggling to control hyperinflation and stem the flow of thousands of his countrymen and women fleeing the economic and political turmoil in the nation. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that he will strike a new trade deal with Mexico while ripping up the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, and threatening a trade war with Canada. Trump said the U.S. will somehow make a deal with Canada. He's hinting at either tariff on cars or some type of a negotiated trade deal. He said it might be possible to make a deal involving all 3 countries like the NAFTA part, but separate bilateral agreements are also possible. NAFTA reduced most trade barriers among the U.S., Mexico and Canada, but Trump and other critics say it encouraged manufacturers to move south of the border to exploit low-wage Mexican labor. Trump said the new deal will be called United States-Mexico Trade Agreement, effectively ripping off NAFTA that includes Canada. French President Emmanuel Macron has informed France's overseas ambassadors who gathered in Paris on Monday that Europe can no longer rely on the U.S. for its security. He said it is up to Europe to take responsibility and guarantee its own security and have European sovereignty. U.S. President Donald Trump has allegedly distanced himself from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization since his election 2 years ago, challenging a post-World War II consensus on peace and security in Europe. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas has called last week for Europe to take an equal share of the responsibility and form a counterweight to Washington as Europe-U.S. relations cool. A Japanese taxi firm Hinomaru and robotics developer ZMP are planning to get automatic taxis on the streets of Tokyo by the start of the 2020 Olympics. ZMP Managing Director Akihiro Nishima said they plan to help those without transportation to have easier access. Hinomaru says the city's taxi industry is already stressed with unprecedented levels of tourism and an aging population, where average age of Tokyo's taxi drivers is almost 60, and there is a shortage of suitable drivers. The 5-kilometer test drive was not completely automatic and still needed a driver to control the wheel on some parts of the route. A test drive volunteer says the robot taxi was just like a normal taxi. Up next, sports. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get the photo send. Now because you the use Palasa, your phone no the answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smart for the air.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store, anywhere in Nigeria, or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it known for your Android, that's Malasa phone.
Welcome back. This is CNN News. In sport, former Wolverhampton Wanderers goalkeeper Carl Ikeme is set to join up with the Nigerian national team and assume his place in Ghana Raw's technical team at their next match with Seychelles. Ikeme, who survived a battle with leukemia but has been forced to retire from the professional game at the age of 32, has been offered a position as a goalkeeper trainer with the Super Eagles. Raw says Ikeme will not only help to train the national team's keepers, but also help unearth young goal-minders for the future. He said having Ikeme in Seychelles won't work because of the long travel time from the UK, but he will be around during subsequent games. Fans were left stunned in Minneapolis, USA over the weekend when a boxing match was won without a punch being thrown. One of the fighters, Curtis Harper, was disqualified when he walked off the ring 1 second after the bell sounded for the bout to begin. The American boxer was to fight Nigerian heavyweight prospect Ife Ajagba, who watched in amazement as Harper exited the ring. A reporter suggested Harper may have been unhappy about the amount he was set to receive for the fight. Referee Celestino Ruiz ruled Ajagba the winner by means of disqualification at 1 second of the first round. Harper's trainer Nate Campbell took to social media to condemn his fighter's action, describing it as disrespectful. Disrespectful is an understatement. Nevertheless, it was an easy payday for Ajagba. That's how we end the news this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit our website, ennafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at CNN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a great evening.